But we've been afraid, Jesus says, to face who we are, who we truly are. And so he's been walking us gently, gently, as we're able to let it in. Through each of these ways that we might need to be who we are. When I was coming back from St. Louis last month, I was speaking there, and my plane got delayed. And by the time I got on, it was pitch dark outside. And for some reason, the plane was half empty. I don't fly much. Maybe everybody else knew you could go get another flight somewhere, but I stayed and waited, and I had this whole row to myself. So even though I usually sit on the aisle, I moved over to the window seat and I stretched out. And so because of this, and it was a short flight home, we were up above the clouds, and I don't know how long it's been since I had flown at night. And there was this cloud cover, I mean, really nice thick cloud cover down below the plane, and it was like blowing softly. And then off in the horizon, there were colors, like the colors of sunset. And then there were some wispy clouds, and in the lights of the plane, I could also see the wind. So it was like this whole kingdom above the clouds. And I got just enamored by it. And I determined that I was going to watch until we came down out of the clouds, because I wanted to see if there was going to be this moment, even a brief moment, when there was no above and below, when there was no kingdom of heaven and no kingdom of earth. And so I did. I kept my eyes open, and then, but we came through this thick cloud cover, and so it was getting a little brighter and a little brighter. And then we came back into the black of sky, but there was sparkles. There were just these couple of sparkles out there. And then, a moment later, it was like a whole beautiful night sky was portrayed down below, full of stars. And then boom, after that, it was like the grid lines, of highways and freeways and neighborhoods. And this was so beautiful. It just sort of stayed with me. And so when I get back home, I have this little cabin in the woods behind my yard, sort of a little hermitage. And what I do every morning is I go out there at sunrise. And I go out to be out at sunrise, not really because I like to see those fancy colors of the sun rising, but I really like to see the darkness fade and the light come. And I thought, this would be a great metaphor for this time in our lives of this great blending, because it's like it always seems like two separate things. There's dark and there's light, and there's sky and there's earth, but they're always blendings. Like when you look out at the ocean, and for me, Lake Superior, because I'm up north, I'll go up to Lake Superior, and if I go in the morning at sunrise, sometimes it's a wall out there. It's like it's one. The sky and the earth are one. And still I watch it, because I want to see that change. And I really believe that maybe some of our fascination with things like sunrise and sunset are because it's like us. Like we show up every day distinct within oneness, sort of like the sun and the moon. And we do this blending, and we don't quite realize it, And, I look around me today, and I know that having heard the voice of Jesus, every one of you has had a profound spiritual experience. And if you've had a profound spiritual experience, you have experienced unity. And if you have experienced unity, then you know that you are more than these bodies, and you know that you are connected to the creative force of love. And if you know that, you know you're not separate, and you know you're not the ego. And if you have experienced one holy instant, you know that you have done what Jesus asked you to do in A Course in Miracles. And if you know these things, I just want to suggest that you are there and you are standing at the threshold of the new. In a book, Annie Dillard, she's a short story writer, and in her book, Teaching a Stone to Talk, she tells a story about Santa Claus. And she said, Santa Claus came to her door, and she was so afraid because the Santa Claus supposedly knew when she'd been bad and she'd been good. Well, it turned out that Santa Claus was a lady across the street. And Annie says, well, she meant only love and love. And I felt only fear and pain. And then she associated this with Jesus. And she said, once in Israel, love incarnate came into the world, stood between two worlds. And we were all afraid. And love incarnate. This is what this new time is about. We're all, in our more mature beings, beginning to be on the lookout for love incarnate. We're beginning to believe that we can be love incarnate. And then we are to express ourselves. Because what we receive is ours to express. Jesus says, allow yourself now to experience your arrival, your return to your true home, your return to your true self. Laugh, cry, shout, or wail, dance and sing. Spin a new web, the web of freedom. In other words, express yourself. You who do not feel confident in your feelings, who do not feel confident in your ability to respond, who do not as yet feel the freedom of the new, allow yourself now to do so. Allow freedom to reign, for it is your allowance, your choice, your permission that will make it so. The only one who can stop you now is yourself. The only permission you ever needed was your own. And I still get tears in my eyes over those words. And that was actually my message in coming here today. The only one who could stop me is me. The only one who can stop you is you. Eight months after I left my job, when my longing and desire had reached a fever pitch, my dear friend, Mary Love, baby Grace's mother, came to my home and shared with me a dream she'd had. She had dreamt of a new Course in Miracles. 5 days later, I had reconciled myself that this was my announcement, that all these things that for all this 8 months that felt like years of longing and waiting, it had all been pointing to this all along. It had all been pointing to work for God, so incredible that I wasn't able to let it in until my dear friend shared this dream with me. So 5 days later, I was ready. I went to my office. Right beside the door, there was a holy water font. I blessed myself. I went to my computer, which sat right beside the door, my desk, and I journaled. And then I closed out my journal file, and I opened a new file, and I sat staring at the screen with the cursor blinking. And it wasn't very long at all. that I heard, "This is a course in miracles." And when I heard those words, I fell to the floor. I said, "Lord, I'm not worthy to receive you. Only say the word, and my soul shall be healed." The old Catholic upbringing. But I was knocked to the floor with the power of it. The power that something before had only been coming, and it had arrived. And this was Jesus. I can't tell you how I knew, but I can tell you that I knew. So in a moment, I got back in my chair. I was shaking a little. I had those tears in my eyes. And again, before long at all, I began to hear the words. And they were very much like Jesus describes later in the Course as thoughts I didn't think. But also so very much like he was reading this book to me. It was that fluid. A Course of Love took 3 years to complete. And it is a course of love. And this course is what you hold in your hands and your hearts today. Many of you, and many around the world, are holding this course of love to themselves. It's become their course. Love is what will change your minds and change the world. Love will tell you that you are not only beloved, you are significant, and you are essential. Love will tell you life is urgent. It's where your power to create lies. Claim your power as your own. And I will ask you to find your own truth. Share your own story. And as Marvin Gaye said, bring a little love in here today. Thank you.
I'm curious. It sounds great, the freedom. It seems like it gives people a freedom to interpret the book that you channeled in any way, like people having just any thoughts or feelings, they could just act on anything. And that doesn't feel right to me. Is that what Jesus was telling you? If you have a certain feeling, go ahead and act on it? Is that your true you? What is your true self?
Well, you know, some
in
of
truth.
these things, like this freedom.
Microphone.
You know, when we start the Course, Jesus is still talking to our ego. He's admitting, you know, there's still this ego self. And then by the time we get to the treatises, it's like, this ego self is on its way out. And then by the time we get to the dialogues, it's gone. And so we are able to return to these feelings because we have gotten rid of the ego self. And you know, people will say to me, you can't say the ego's gone just because you read the book. Well, that's probably true if all you did was read. But if you have absorbed the book the way Jesus asks you to with your heart, he's the one telling you. I mean, Jesus meets us where we are. I always meet Jesus where he is. And he's saying, don't put in your thought and effort. Just let this be done for you. Let it come into you. And you will move beyond your ego. And when we have moved beyond the ego, really what we need to do is bring back our true self. So in order to be able to do that, we have to be able to feel what we feel and express what we express and do this radical acceptance. I mean, there's a radical acceptance about A Course of Love at the end. Because we're in the business now of, it used to be it was an ego self. Okay, you got feelings. So much of it was about an ego self. But when it's not about the ego anymore, we've got this true self to learn about. We've got a true self to discover. A self that's full of love and passion and ready to be a creator of the new. So that's my answer to that. I hope it answered it. Yes?
When I read the book that our ego does not.
Where's the microphone?
Question, please. Like on the first go round, we did not get a question.
Oh,
All right. I'm trying to say it to the room.
Do you have another microphone?
Thanks, Rudy.
what's going on?
All right, I'll ask the question. When I first read The Ego Does Not Learn, it's in the beginning where it says,
right away.
who is doing the learning? It says the ego does not learn. Well, that's pretty clear. It actually says that in the Course, too.
Mm-hmm.
It says, eventually though, it says it's the Christ that learns.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of always used Christ consciousness as the idea of an all-knowing.
Mm-hmm.
So how does, but maybe I'm not using it the way that it was meant. How does the Christ learn? What was meant?
Sure, well, that's why I thought it was so bizarre.
Oh, I did too.
Yeah, I thought it was really bizarre when I first saw that. I guess, actually, you could keep...
No,
Just use it, okay. But, it's like Christ is the one and the many. So it's like the Christ consciousness that is in you is Christ consciousness as Rita. And in me is Christ consciousness as Mari. And so this is why we have all this stuff about coming to our expression, using our creativity, being who we are. Because we don't need, Jesus says in there, the time when one baby born to a virgin mother could change the world is past. He says, we all need to be it. This is it. We're the second coming of Christ. This is the message of A Course of Love. We are to be the second coming. Yeah.
So it's the actualizing of the Christ consciousness, like in myself.
Yeah.
The actualizing of it. That's the learning that is talking about. Thank you. Thank you.
But as you.
Yeah.
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 So it's not all this being, clone stuff. Jesus says, you're not called to be clones. You're not called to be one ideal kind of spiritual person. You're called to be you.
Thank you. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. You got one?
Yes.
Just to clarify, doesn't that individual self or that individual Christed state include the actualization of divine consciousness coming from divine awareness? Did Jesus address that at all?
Well, I don't
Use
think...
the mic.
Are you talking about divine consciousness and divine awareness as something that you feel stands separate from us?
No, one and the same.
Yes, one of
But
us.
without the divine consciousness, it's just kind of the old school of but I'm just thinking, and I just wanted to ask you, without the divine, I think he's talking about being divinely aware, and bringing the individual talents to life. But the divine awareness is what calls in the Christ, aligns with the Christ consciousness. Yes.
Yeah. But you know, I kind of avoid those words sometimes because I think people have this ideal this idea of the Christ consciousness, like we're all going to be channeling or walking on air or something like that. At least that's the way I've seen it, that people associate that with something so out there, sort of removed from me. And I believe we all have that in us. And it's more ordinary than that. That we can live our ordinary lives with this Christ consciousness and bring it anywhere. And we don't have to have lives that look spiritual or are dedicated in a certain way. You know, it's like we're all needed for all these differences. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking the Christ consciousness isn't the special, it's actually the natural state.
Yeah.
It's really the only real natural state. And it's like you said already here, but I just get that when the Christ is alignment with that divine state, which is already here in the natural state, that's what I think we're being called to. Yeah, thank you.
I got a great way to express your book because I'm a big fan and I've already told you that. It's a guerrilla divinity. Guerrilla divinity. I really appreciate those words because we are human beings in the divine, all the stuff that goes on, all the stuff that is so human. And that's what makes it, it's the spaghetti and it's the pasta, and you put the spaghetti and the pasta together and you get, wow.
And you got the Rolling Stones, and you got Marvin Gaye.
Well, you got Marvin Gaye. The other part of this is that this is a multiple revelation kind of deal. Like the revelations, they keep coming. You know, people say, well, I don't have a revelation. Well, this is multiple orgasms, multiple revelations going on all the time. Right? Men don't know how to do that. Women know how to do that. You said it was feminine consciousness. You did. You did. You said that. I didn't say that. Thank you.